Personal property and wills. Yeah, like I said, lots of this stuff is helpful to you as consumers before you become, you get into, everybody knows C-suite, you know, the corner suite. Before you get to the corner suite, when you're going to be using all this stuff every day, as you deal with liability issues for your business, you still are consumers in the meantime. So there's a lot of good information in this chapter. Of course, property is divided into real property, which is real estate and anything attached to it, and personal property. Personal property is easy. It's divided into two categories. You can touch it, you can't touch it. Tangible and intangible. How hard can this be, right? Okay, not hard. Real property, bundle of all of the rights an owner has in real estate. Now, we don't have zoning here. If you're in an area in the rest of the country where they have zoning, your property is impaired by zoning. We still have easements that determine where the utilities run. Most of your yards have the last 10 feet. There's a utility easement. Your sewer lines run. Your water line may run in the front yard. Usually the sewer line runs in the backyard. Stuff like that. Those are easements that are imposed on your property, usually for your benefit. So it's usually not a very controversial issue. Personal property is everything you can touch, move along with it. You know, one of the things that's interesting when I talk about intangibles is that business has transitioned where we used to focus on the railroads and the number of miles of track and the number of locomotives and rail cars. Most valuable businesses in the most valuable business in the world by stock valuation is
Walmart, Exxon, or Google.
none of those. Most valuable by stock market valuation. Apple Computer. Apple, which I think is hideously overvalued. Yeah, it's tech, but it's Apple. Yeah, and it's all intellectual property. They don't make anything. All the stuff that they design is made by Samsung, which is why Samsung's been so easy for them to rip them off, because they send it over there for them to make it. It's like, how hard can this be? Except when they made batteries. Yeah. So anyway, interesting deal. Intangible personal property is where we're getting a lot of our value for business today. So conflict of laws. One of the things we get into is which state's laws apply. Now, good example of this. I have a company here in Houston, Texas, sold some pumps to a company in Oklahoma that installed them in a facility in Canada. And my guys here in Houston have not gotten paid yet. They got $5,000 the other day because some nice sharp attorney sent a demand letter on their behalf. And so we got first $5,000. Told them they can use that to sue them. At least they got a little bit of money to start with. $110,000 owed to them. So we're working out a payout schedule and run interference on that. Trying to get out of the way because I don't want to keep fooling with it. Is I want the controller for my client to be talking to the controller for the company in Oklahoma and work out getting paid. But the issue is, if you have to sue them, where do you sue them? Well, they don't have a clear-cut contract. They have exchange of purchase orders. We call that battle of the forms, which we have that again. So what happens is my client's purchase order says any legal issues will be heard in Houston, Harris County, Texas. We're going to rely on that. If we need to sue them, we're going to sue them in Houston, Harris County, Texas, and rely on that. I'm not saying a judge is going to buy it. What would I like to see? I'd like to see them use their contract, which they've had less, which says anytime there's a legal issue on our stuff, you have to come to Houston, Texas and do it, including collections. So they missed an opportunity there, but at least we've got a little bit of an argument to say it needs to be heard here. If you have to sue them on their home base up in Tulsa, it's harder. Further, we can't go put a lien on the materials that were provided because they're physically in another country. Canada's close, but it's still another country, folks. So we need to watch out. So conflict of laws makes a difference. Now, if the stuff is in a particular location, we usually have an automatic. Again, if it was, say, in New Mexico, we could file suit in New Mexico and say we want our pumps back if it was in a state of the United States. But since it's in, we know the pumps are installed in Canada, it makes it difficult to go after it. We like things with title. Generally speaking, automobiles, certain pieces of equipment, RVs, boats, things like that, things that have titles. It's more clear on the ownership track when you've got the item and you own the title. Most of you know that just from buying cars and stuff like that. Dealing with deceased owners, it gets very complex. I ended up getting involved in one of these. I consult for a real estate company, realty management company. The tenant died. And the question was, well, what do they do with his furniture? What about his overdue rent? Stuff like that. It's kind of interesting. So we just got that resolved. And the estate, his family did pay the bill. So that was nice. And the reason I said it was nice is because it would be a big legal hassle trying to collect the overdue rent if they hadn't agreed. And also to get the furniture out of the house. Not that we want, something. We just want stuff out of the house. We can't rent it to somebody else. There's got a bunch of other stuff sitting in. Very clear statement there. Taxes, especially here in Texas, confiscatory real estate taxes, very tough. Fixtures. This is an area that we spend a lot of attention to as business people, because if many businesses are in leaseholds, where you get into a real fight is over fixtures. Here's a simple example. You take this room and you decide you rent this in a shopping center, and you're going to put a Subway in here. Subway, pretty simple restaurant. You're going to put built-in counters, you're going to put a front window in, you're going to put doors, you're going to build a bathroom in the back, you're going to build a back door in it so you get in and out for supplies. And so you make a lot of improvements. Those are fixtures. Now, you sit some stools along the front counter, you've got some cooler chests in there to keep the meat fresh, and stuff like that. Those are just sitting there. And if they're not connected and built in, it is expected when you pay your 10 years of lease or whatever, that you're going to take that with you. The remaining stuff, you don't get to take the toilet with you. Not that you would want to, but you don't get to take the stuff that you converted into fixtures. And it's quite clear in most commercial leases, you converted that into the landlord's property. Now, where it gets tricky is if the landlord gives column A, column B, and say that it's not a Subway, it's a company that has deep fryers. Deep fryers complicate real estate a lot because they're high risk and they generate a lot of mess. You need a grease trap, you need a fire suppression system, and so forth. So after 10 years in a leasehold, most of that equipment is not worth anything. It stinks. So the landlord may say, not only is it a fixture, if I decide it's a fixture, I'm keeping it. If I decide it's not a fixture, you have to take it out before you get your security deposit back. You do it, landlord wins. You do that, landlord wins.
But usually they put it in the contract on the front end, can it?
No, he's not forced it. They put it in the contract front end that says we'll make a decision at the end. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, and it's hard to negotiate because we've had such consolidation in the real estate industry. I mean, if you're trying to rent a space in the Galleria, I guarantee you, if you can get 2 words changed in that contract, you will have done good. And I have reviewed believe it or not, a kiosk agreement in the Galleria. And I can vouch for that. And I also looked at something else in the Galleria today. Those people aren't fooling around. Yeah, you have no, even if you're a big chain like Macy's and Lord & Taylor, you have a lot more market. If you're not as big as they are, you have almost no ability to change things. So you say, well, why should you have a lawyer review it if you can't change it? So you know how bad it is. Yeah, I know it sounds funny. You're probably paying 2 or 3 hours for an attorney to read a 100-page lease to make sure you understand what you need to buy, buy insurance on, make sure you know what you're doing, so you're not hammered by accident. Generally speaking, we do a lot of different ways of moving real estate. The most simple one, of course, is you buy it. You could also have a transfer deed by gift or by will. Inter vivos gifts are the most common. You go visit grandma. Grandma says, well, thank you so much for driving over today. Here's $10 for gasoline. That's an inter vivos gift. That's pretty simple. Now, this is usually we require delivery and acceptance. You may say, well, gee, $10, that was easy. Well, maybe you didn't. The best example is my dad, who's passed, gave me his coin collection. And I said, I don't want the coin collection. Not that I collect coins, but I said, my son is coming up and he's like really into coins. And I said, I really just assume you give it to my son. And so that's what happened. So you can't pass on a gift. And of course he could have said, well, if you're not taking it, screw you, I'm giving it to the other grandson or something like that. So, certainly it's his prerogative. But in this case, win. The odd thing is, I've ended up being the keeper of it for 12 years. Because my son's in college, and we don't want it out wandering around. It's not super valuable; it's probably worth a few $1,000 bucks. But we don't want it wandering around while he's still in school. But it's still he has the equitable interest. He has the equitable ownership. Executory promises to make a gift are not enforceable. So if you're just promising to make a gift, you have not actually made it, then you can't force somebody to give you a gift. Now, there is an oddball deal here. I want you to memorize this only because it's so weird, and it's in all the business law textbooks, although I don't know why. It's called gifts in causa mortis. And this is where your Uncle Charlie says, you know what, the doctors have given me 6 weeks to live. I'm going to give you my 2001 Honda Civic with 89,000 miles on it and drive it in good health. And then Uncle Charlie gets the news that they read the wrong x-ray or they read it upside down and he's not dying. Guess what? You don't get to keep the car. Gift in causa mortis. Now he could turn it into an inter vivos gift, but if he specifically gave it to you with the understanding that it was because he was in anticipation of death, if that doesn't happen, it doesn't work. Now it gets even better. Instead of dying from cancer, because that's what he thinks when he gives you the Honda, he gets run over by a car. Your gift is canceled. Because he didn't die from what he anticipated when he made the gift in anticipation of death. So anyway, it's just an oddball thing, but...
So do you don't get to find if someone disputes that the gift is yours?
Yeah, that's what happens, because usually when you have an estate, like I'm one of 7 kids, and my mother had 19 grandchildren across the 7 of us, and not counting the little ones below that. And so, yeah, you can have a lot of disputes about, hey, she loved you more than she loved me, I didn't give that, So that's what happens, yeah. Nobody can test it. I mean, how's anybody going to know? It's like, know the difference, whether it was an inter vivos gift that just gave him the car versus he gave the car in anticipation of death. Usually another family member is hacked off, or the bank. The bank shows up and says, well, Uncle Charlie owed a bunch of money, and we're going to look for gifts to make sure he wasn't, avoiding his debts by trying to give stuff away to hurt the banks. So, yeah. Think about who might have an interest in the deal. Okay. Keep in mind, abandoned property is anybody's game. You drive up and down the streets here in Houston, and you see furniture sitting on the curb. A lot of times they have a little sign on them. Have these chairs and all that. Well, that's abandoned property. Lost continues to belong to you, and the local statutes usually determine what's going to happen with that furniture personal possession. Okay? So in other words, you leave your Mac somewhere, they're worth about $1,000. And it's, first of all, it's easy to determine because you have a recorded serial number on it, so it should be findable. But say, for instance, nobody can power it up, nobody really knows what it is. So then the police department holds it. Depending on local ordinance, if the police department holds it for a year, you're the person who turned it in, nobody else claims it, it's your laptop. So pretty interesting. However, if the original owner shows up, they can get it. Nobody else has claim to it except the original owner. And by that time, they're going to have to prove that they really did lose it. You mislay property. You leave, many of us leave umbrellas at different businesses during rainy season. And it still belongs to you if you can get there before somebody steals it. I'm going to introduce you to the term bailment. Bailment is something that you just don't know it by the word bailment. What's a classic example of bailment? Lots of easy ones.
Show up for court cases.
What's that?
If you don't show up on your birthday.
No, that's bail, that's bail, and that's called incarceration. No, bailment deals with property. You go to the dry cleaners, best example, you go to the dry cleaners and you give them your suit. And you have created a mutually beneficial bailment. What happens in that bailment is that you need your suit cleaned so you'll look good for your job interview next week. They, in turn, can't operate unless people like you bring them dry cleaning so they can perform it and get money. So they get money, that's their benefit. You get a clean suit, that's your benefit. That's a mutually beneficial bailment. Now, in the example where you loan somebody your car, that is a donor bailment because he didn't rent him the car, he loaned him the car. So that is a bailment for the benefit of the bailee or the bailor. You loaned the car, your brother-in-law loaned him the car. So that's a one-way bailment. So we want to kind of keep track of that again. It's a term, all of us know the action, but we don't know the term is bailment. And I'll tell you, you see it frequently, you don't realize it. How many of you have ever read when you pull into a parking garage and you get that machine puts out that little tug? How many of you actually read one of those tabs? The very first words on that tab are, the little card said, this is not a bailment. Because bailment brings with it the responsibility to take care of your stuff. Dry cleaner may deny bailment, but they're responsible for your suit while they have it in your possession. They are. They can't deny it. They may say it on their claim slip, but it won't work. Now, two different things with your car, though. If you are driving your car in a parking lot, then that's not creating a bailment. That's a license to use a little strip of real estate and put your car there. Now, you valet park. I hate valet park. How many of you hate valet park? Yeah, almost everybody here. Yeah. And I have a friend who drives a Porsche. She really hates valet park. They tore out the transmission on her car, a clutch on her car. So I don't think she's valet parked for the last 10 years. And she's a kind of high-profile person who goes to a lot of fancy stuff. So I don't know how she does that, because there's so many of the nice restaurants where you kind of force the valet. In any event, they may say to you, here's your claim check, hey, we're not complaining of bailment. Absolutely ridiculous. You have to surrender your car and your keys. They better sure as heck bring that car back in good condition. Many, many, many cars are damaged in valet park. It's amazing how many friends of mine have had their cars. I'm one of the few people I know, and I don't valet park very often, one of the few people I know who have not had their car yet damaged in valet park. It's definitely a bailment, definitely a legal right. The key problem is proving that the car was damaged in their possession.
That's not what I was about to say.
That's
I managed about that operation.
yeah, that's the big problem.
I'm not proving.
And we hire valets. When I do an annual party at my house on Heights, and we hire valet service because there's not much street parking. So we were actually on both ends of that one. Yes,
Will car wash stations also be an example of bailments?
what's that?
Car wash stations?
Yes, yes, oh yeah. But they put disclaimers in because if you have if you have non-standard equipment on your car, like I was driving on 59 today, and there was some idiot with those giant spindles that come out like a foot off each wheel, and it's like, why would you do this? It's just like, you know. One of the things to keep in mind when we talk about property is how do you document property? One of the classic examples, of course, with valets is the claim check. Claim check's important. Dry cleaners, they always tell you, please bring your paper in, you know, when you come get your stuff, you know, stuff like that. That's the type of stuff we're talking about. In business, we also look at public warehouses. Public warehouse, sometimes you're renting just an area to put a bunch of boxes. They will give you a bill of lading and say, okay, you've got a bunch of boxes here. We'll put them anywhere we want. You're not renting the space. You're storing those boxes with us. We'll go find them when we need to. We'll code them and we'll get them for you. Okay, that's bill of lading. Now, negotiable bill of lading is more fun. Suppose that you are an intermediary and you have 100 TV sets, nice big white screen TV sets. So you take them to a public warehouse with a negotiable bill of lading, you store them at the warehouse. You don't have to deliver the 100 TV sets. You sell somebody your bill of lading and say, over at that warehouse, here's the description of this 100 TV sets. Give me the money, then whenever you're ready, you take your truck over there and pick them up by appointment, you know, whatever their operating hours. So that's a negotiable bill of lading, but bill of lading is an important aspect of this. Yep, L-A-D-I-N-G. Now we're going to come back and talk about negotiable instruments, but this is a one slide introducing you to the concept. Basically, when we write a check, we say pay to order. If it's payable to bearer, it's bearer paper, and it's still negotiable. If it's payable to a specific individual, it has to be negotiated by that individual or that business. Okay, most of you know that. Most of you also know that you can negotiate it. So, you know, your roommate gets a $100 check from grandma, they're leaving town, and they need to get the money tonight. You run to the ATM, you give them some cash, and they endorse the back of the check to you. So they have negotiated the check to you. You then go deposit it in your bank, right? That's what we're talking about. Holder negotiable instrument acquires preferred status if there's been proper negotiation and they're holder in due course. We're going to come back and talk about that. One of the things to know, this is the first time we've seen UCCs in our talk tonight, Uniform Commercial Code, an agreement among law professors and attorneys and other people involved in business, develop a standardized set of rules for doing business in interstate commerce, the purpose being to expedite commerce across the states. Now there is one state that does not participate in the UCC, only one state, and it is the state of
Louisiana.
Absolutely, it's the state of Louisiana, because
They're crazy. That's French, but I don't know why.
we may have to edit some of this out. That's probably true, but it's because they follow the Napoleonic Code. So since everything's already codified, they didn't need to adopt the UCC because it's already, whatever code it is, it's their code. And the rest of the states codified. And actually, as a practical matter, by the way, I'm licensed in Louisiana on inactive status. I'm licensed actively in Texas and Virginia. But what's interesting about it is that there's very, very little difference between doing business, legal business in Texas and Louisiana. There's hardly any. And it's just a big myth, I think, to protect the attorneys in Louisiana so that they don't have as much competition. They don't have reciprocity. So when I moved from Texas to Virginia in 1999, I didn't have to take the bar exam. I just waived in. But in Louisiana, I had to go over and take the Napoleonic Code, take the exam, and all that. It was interesting. Waste of time, it was interesting. But we want you to know, Uniform Commercial Code, we're going to come back and talk about it, is UCC2 is on sale of goods. UCC2A is the lease of goods. The lease of goods. So, difference between 2 and 2A. Let's take a quick look at wills. Document used to dispose of a person's assets at death. That's pretty straightforward. And a person has to have capacity when they enter into a will. The worst thing you can do to your family is die intestate. I recommend to all of my students, as soon as you get out of school, and if you're already working full-time, as many of you are, you should have a will right now. Very easy to do. Many law firms that charge a very modest amount for simple form will. Also, they're available on the internet for free. You'll go past 3 pages of charging things like what it is that LegalZoom and all that. There's plenty of free wills on the internet. You just have to get through the pages of commercial stuff. Yes, sir?
Is it still considered intestate if you have a will that's not notarized?
You may end up intestate. It depends. If you do it all in your handwriting, it's called a holographic will. And in most states, that's going to be binding. What happens, though, most people cannot write that far. I can't. They're going to type it up and then sign it. That's not going to get you a holographic will. It has to be all in your handwriting, and that would be binding even in Texas. Here in Texas, you need 3 witnesses and a notary, so we call it a self-proving will. And in my law office, we have periodically, they round up everybody in the building and we all go sit in. And we don't know who the person is, we don't know if they're competent or not, we can't tell, we just see them for 2 seconds. It's like, yeah, okay, here's our signature, yeah, get it over with. So, but yeah, that's technically correct. And in fact, I reviewed a will as a courtesy for somebody recently who's having a lot of health issues. And everything looked right, but she only had 2 witnesses. She downloaded the will off the internet and downloaded the wrong will. So they had 2 witnesses and a notary instead of 3 witnesses. So it wasn't like, didn't meet Texas full standard. Whether that would be viewed as intestate or not is a good question. But I asked them to go ahead and review the will and the signature. So again, it's going to vary from state to state. Intestate succession goes by state law. Louisiana, a very interesting state because you cannot disinherit children unless they kill you.